Hello. I just realised that I hadn't muted myself anyway, sorry. Hi. Okay. So, there's a bunch of stuff happening today. But we're going to start with something hopefully really cool. You can kind of see the orthographic I've got going on. Orthographic's not the right word. The base shapes and shading. And the plan is to essentially take that, and I need to put this character into 3/4 view to match the other two, right? And then I need to do a bunch of shading and rendering on the rest of them all together. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to transform it. And that is harder than it might seem, but also easier than it might seem. I think there's a pretty solid argument for both things. And then we're going to, like, hopefully have it all figured out. So, for those that like the art rants, this might be really interesting, or it might be really boring, depending how well I do it. Basically, that's the summary. I'm not going to do this for too long today. I had a 9 AM lecture. I'm very tired. But also, I wanted to stream and I wanted to start doing this, and I didn't get to stream yesterday. I would also maybe stream for a bit longer, but I have to go to a medical appointment, chiropractor appointment this afternoon, so that's also part of why I'm like just chilling a little bit today. So hopefully this is fun. Basically, I have the core shapes, right? That's the trick. And so what I can do, having those core shapes, is I can kind of go, well, what are they? So this is a big ball, right? So from the front, it's a big circle. I'm actually going to make this bigger. There we go. Yeah. Okay, I want to actually use... Sorry, trying to figure out the brush I want to use for this. Maybe this one is right. Yeah, I think it actually is the right brush. I want it to have a little bit of opacity, so I can be a little bit markery, a little bit sketchy, without it being a problem. That's the idea. So, the first thing I'm going to do is kind of figure out the dynamics of it with this circle. Where do I want it to be? How do I want it to go? So if I make it a big ball like that, that's probably too big for the body I have, right? Like that goes a bit far, so let's kind of tuck it in a little bit. This doesn't have to be the neatest thing in the world. Right, I'm gonna render this all out anyway. And then for the front, I want it to be a little bit more tucked in. There we go. So that's kind of where I want it to be. And this is how this is gonna run, which is we're just gonna do this with every piece. And this is the way you do orthographic views, this is the way you do turnarounds. There's ways to make it easier, right? If I just want to do front and back, if I want to do the back of this, I can... That's really easy. The thing that's hard is... Actually, I can show you how to do a back in like one step, right? If we take this... and this. He says instantly getting distracted from the thing he was supposed to be doing, but if I take these, I'm just going to delete them anyway, for now. But if the first thing I do is I take this, and we'll make a new layer, and I'm going to fill it with black. Oh, no, not. I'm going to flip it inverse and fill it with black. And then I'm just going to grab this whole selection of stuff and delete that black again. There we go. This is the front. It can now be the back. There's a few things I have to change, right? So it's coming forward instead of going recessing. So the big thing is the arms. But the trick with those is just to invert them. The rest of it kind of works, right? This core silhouette could be front or back. I just have to change the dynamics. So one of the main things is these front bits that are hidden. Well, if we want them to be the back, they're still going to be hidden, right? So, let's just hide that layer. So stuff like that. Yeah. So I'm not going to do the full thing, but we can start to do things like this. But for this one, we're going to go a step up. Which is, we have this really cool, I love these. We broke down the whole piece into base shapes. And then added some shading and stuff, right? And essentially I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm breaking it into base shapes, but then applying them more how I want them to really be. Right, so I want this to be roughly the same size. That curvature should be roughly the same, right? But now we're at an angle, so that's fine. And then below here, if I turn off the shading, you can kind of see how I've done the orthographic. It's not an orthographic, I can't remember what the actual word is. I like the word orthographic a lot though. But the plan here is like, okay, so I'm going to add in... That's a bit big. Add in that kind of shape. And then this comes down, and it's the same formology. It's pretty flat and even and round. And I need to make this actually a little bit longer, a little bit thinner. And that's fine, I can just do that. And we're going to keep doing that with all of the constituent pieces. And then we can detail it. At some point I can take this and do that. And suddenly we're starting to get the body forming. It also is going to let me play around a bit with... 3/4 is better for a lot of reasons, but one of the main ones, the most important things, is that it allows me to demonstrate a lot more depth to the piece. So one of the big things is where the eye is, I actually want that to be kind of a raised area. So as much as I want the eye to sit, I want it to come out. Right, and it will be something more like that. And this is something I couldn't do before that I can now, because then I can start getting something like that. And then we want the body. It's just below the crux of the eye, which is perfect, because this is where we want our mask to be. And then we want that body to be like hanging in here, right? And so you can see already we're starting to... This is slightly too side view anyway, I need to move it across, but you can start to see like the way in which we can get the angles going. So for 3/4 view, however, that would be side view. So that's if I wanted to turn this into the side, that's how I would do it. You can even like, you can put in this and it chops off the arm, but it tells you where it slots. So for 3D modeling, that's super useful. But for what I want to do here, I want this to be 3/4, right? That's important. So in making it 3/4 view, I kind of want it to be here. And I'm doing this very deliberately because this is telling me where this is going to be. So this needs to come in. And I can just clean it up a little bit. So knowing this area, this like strip, is important for me. It's not really important otherwise. It's important specifically for what I want this to do. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to do the eye. Is that where we want it? I think that's where we want the eye to be. But we want to add some curvature now. So I'm going to cheat slightly for this, and rather than drawing it in, I'm going to take this and I'm going to use a special transformation type called a mesh transformation, which is going to let me pull it more to the form I want it to have. Now, as I said, we also want it to like bulge more than it does currently. So this is going to allow me to play around with some of these things. I'm going to redraw it later anyway, right? That's part of it. I'm willing to be quite liberal with the form. Because I just want to get a rough idea of where I'm going to draw it in later. This is the first pass. So let's say we do that. I actually think that's slightly too far over again, but we have it more like this. Maybe not. Maybe I redo it. Yeah. It's just going to be a trial and error process. I can't do it with confidence because I haven't fully... This is really the first time I'm drawing it again, right? I did the silhouette and then I drew on top of it, which is a good way to do it, but it's not something I'm hugely... I haven't had time to get used to how this works. But let's just try putting an arm in, right? So it's this rounded shape below the top. And that just kind of works. And then we've got a cylinder here for the first like joint in, which leads to the bar there, which leads to the second recessed cylinder there. Recessed because it's down, that's why. And I'm just going to cut in to all of these cylinders, so to make them clear to me and to you, I'm going to cut them out. So we can kind of see where we're going to be going with it, right? That's what I want. I want the cylinders to be really clear to me so I can see how they are supposed to be intersecting with everything else. So things like, is his shoulder big enough? Probably not. I think I want to make it bigger, so all I'm going to do is cut that, and then I'll make it a little bit bigger. But do you see we're keeping that form going from there? So we're going to do this arm again. So this is a nice big cylinder. Which tapers down to here, and then we're not going to see too much of this bone piece here, this spur. Right, it's going to get hidden. But that's another cylinder there. And then this is an odd sort of cuboid shape. And what we're going to see this time is, do you see how we're seeing the front here? Because we're on that side of it, we're on this front side of it. We're essentially going to get rid of that. So we're going to do it the other way, which is we're going to see the back, and it's not going to be very big because of where the angle is, and then we're going to see up, up, and I've crunched that because I've put it too far down and slightly too much. And then the question for me is like, is it far enough away? And I don't think it is. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to pull it a little bit out, and we're going to angle it a little bit more, and we're going to tuck it in a little bit more as well. There we go. So doing that is just to help the process. It's nothing complicated, hopefully. So this is going to come down more and go out, and there we go. And then I can actually take, if I want to, right, I can just take this arm. This arm is kind of in the right place. It just needs to tuck under. So I'm actually going to steal, yeah, I'm going to steal this arm because I've already drawn it out and it's a good way to have a look. So I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'm just going to take it over here. Because size, is the size correct on both sides? Yeah, so this arm is big enough, and this arm is that size. So this arm needs to get smaller, right? Much smaller. And it needs to angle slightly differently. But it's going to tuck round, and that's going to give me a good idea of where it is. And then I can also see what this one needs. And so one thing this one needs is this needs to be much more exaggerated. It needs to be just a little bit bigger. Okay, so then on this side I can draw around this. So in, got this cylinder still. This cylinder is the same, like this is all the same, right? There's no... change required to this. At its heart, it's doing exactly the same job that it did on the other side, because we were already... they were tilted out, right? So we already had that angle. Some of the changes I might make are this cylinder is going to move up a little bit. So that's the first thing. It's because of the way I have them displayed. I want the cylinder to move up a little bit and be a little bit bigger. No, that's too big. And what we're going to do is I'm going to free transform it because I want it to be a little taller. But it needs to be thinner still. So thickness doesn't change massively with perspective, but length does. That's really important. That's one of the key things I think for perspective changes. Now I don't like this formology that much. I think this needs to be more exaggerated, so I'm just going to push it a little bit. Basically, I'm going to tuck that round more. Now, what you might notice is, of course, I haven't done the legs at all yet. And the legs are going to be the most complicated part. Because they are, I think, the best piece of this design. In a weird way, I like the legs a lot. And B, because there's a lot more going on in them. There's kind of like as much articulation in this leg as there is in the rest of it. We're going to square this a little bit more, right? We'll recess that in. And tuck it up. And then we need the bar here, which is going to show us that. Those bars are because this joint kind of doesn't exist. I thought about doing a ball joint or something similar, but the bar works for me. I think it's nice. They kind of just connect and articulate separately. It's actually this cylinder. If you look on the engine piece, this cylinder connects at that bar. And it's kind of like a weird ball joint that rubs against itself. It's cool, I think, but... this needs to have the same angle on it. That's important because that's the ground plane, right? So these need to also angle in. And we're going to tuck and cut and cut. See, that's most of the way to how we want it. That needs to be a little bit more in there. Probably worth noting that's not an up-facing curve, that's a down-facing curve. So let's just do it again. Yeah, that's more accurate. So it's not perfect so far, but hopefully it's giving that idea across of like what we're trying to achieve, right? It should come in. Now this time, this is going to tuck in, it's actually going to come that way, right? So there's some more changes to make, just to make sure the angles are correct. That's going to give me... there we go. Okay, and then... we still need this eye to function, so it's going to come out, I think, like that. Is that too big? Yeah. So we're going to take it down a little bit. Actually, it needs to be a bit flatter. See, I really like that eye, but I need to figure out how I want it to be angled. So if I do the orthographic again, not the what the contour, that's the thing I'm trying to do here. If I do the contour line, right, that's the contour for this. So actually that is not helping, that's part of the problem. That also needs to be wider, right, because this is pretty wide. I know I cut that in, that's part of the problem. Okay, so we're going to remove some of this and have a look. Remove some of that and have a look. You see we're starting to get there. That contour line actually probably needs to be there, which is that middle eye portion. It's like less exaggerated curve, which is probably not a good thing. So let's try halfway between. Yeah, something like that I think is better. Which means we want the eye to bisect this. There we go. Which means that should be about there. Now if we want it to come up a little bit, say for example I draw this around it, right? That still looks flush. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it, which is very gently going to pop it slightly further over than it should be. But that requires me to get everything else in place first. So we're going to leave the eye there for now. I need to check. So again, I need to check on the size things, right? Because these should be the same size. And you can already see, probably clear here, they are not the same size. It's a bit too big. So we're going to cut it down. And then you can see where the eye should be, right? So, and where this curve should be. So you can kind of see where I've made the mistakes. Now, they're not entirely mistakes, they're just little ones at best. So one thing is that this needs to come in more before it comes here. That's bigger. And then this eye comes way down. So it needs to be equivalent of here. And its size too. Because what size is that? Pretty huge. Something more like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the... Oh yeah, we're going to push it up and out a little bit. And then we're going to take this and we're going to move it across again and we're going to have a look and be like, ah yes, this is better than it was before. You've done a fabulous job. Because I've done a fabulous job. Now I really like this formology and I want to keep it. That's impossible. But we're going to break it up. So what I'm going to do is sketch over it, which you can't really see, I'm sorry. I can't really see it either because it doesn't actually matter here. Okay. And then we're going to take it. I've done that weirdly. There we go. Kaboom. Now, is that tiny? Looks tiny. So that needs to go up there. And that's because this is too short, and that's fine. This is good to know, right? Ah, no, it's because I've raised it too high. Aha. I don't know why I've raised the entire thing higher than it should be. That's a weird life choice. Let's just double check. Where should we be for height? There. Right, there we go. Now, some other things are not quite correct here. One thing you may notice is that this is just not at the right angle anymore. That's right, it needs to tuck in and out a little bit further. And this needs to come back round a tiny, tiny bit. There we go. And then, this isn't perfect, but basically if I have it like this, I really like that dynamic there on that leg. So I'm gonna really colour this in for a second, just to give us the idea, because this needs to come round, and then what we need is the nice cloth tabard needs to come in like there. Right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase out that section or two so we can see it clearly. I'm going to do the same here, which is I'm just going to raise the bits I coloured in so that they are clearer. Now, there's a few other things I need to establish in this hierarchy. Of drawing, so to speak. One thing is I need to get the thickness of these bits correct now. Well, maybe it was nice, tiny actually. Yeah, I think it was fine. And then the second thing is I need to make sure that like these are all still within the proportion. So the one thing is that is much further recessed back in my image. Or the plan is for it to be further recessed back, right? That's quite a big difference. If you notice, that difference no longer sort of exists. If we draw like the triangle that this is existing in, right, for the point of the body, that's that perspective. This is much closer. This is because of this angle, because of these. So the first thing I'm going to do is just like before, I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it. I think I'm going to move it to here. And then we need to make that work, so that's going to come round and through. And this needs to match with it, right? So this is the back part, which, that's badly done. But this back piece, kind of, this is curving here, and it's coming in and out, and like it's reasonably thick, so it needs to be there, and it needs to be showing there, right? What we're going to do is this kind of bulges way further up. It's like a noticeable thing, right? And so I want it to feel like that's still there, that kind of tapered. Extension. So we're going to do that. Notably, I'm not trying to do this perfectly either. There are parts of it where I'm like, does that design look right? Is there something I can change to make it look better right now? And at moments there'll be points of like, yeah, that would look way better like X instead of Y. See, so then we're getting that moving a bit more. That almost needs to be more exaggerated, actually. Because that's much more Yeah. Now we want our little witch fellow. So I've done it as a bunch of triangles here, and we're going to kind of do the same thing. So this needs to be this kind of cylindrical triangle start that comes in and out. And then we need the mask. Now part of what I think makes this design nice is this comes in, right, and then this pops out a little bit. So I'm actually going to have it overlap more. And rather than having the circular one, to better communicate where it's looking, I am going to do the triangular. So there we go. Now that's too big and a little weird in terms of scale, so we're going to tuck, tuck, and then tuck, tuck. We'll do that. Now there's still some other things we need done here, right? So one thing is the other leg needs to poke out. Possible. Maybe it would just be hidden behind the arm, actually. Actually, this is chest, isn't it? That's part of this. So that's actually up here in the chest area. Yeah, and that cocoons in a little bit, right? That's the way that's drawn. Is this cocooning thing. And this is where I'm going to start drawing some of these. I'm going to redraw these detail bits later, of course, right? But this is where it's useful to have that detail somewhat, so I can start seeing how it's going to function. Right, that's important here. I can start to get an idea of like, what does this actually look and feel like to the eye. So I'm going to add in some of these just dashes and joints and so on, just get an idea. I'm like, okay, that works. This needs to come across more, right? This needs to have stuff kind of intersecting a little bit more. That's kind of a plate, that's a separate plate. These come round and they can cut off a little bit here and here. But that's how that actually looks. That's going to be the center line for this bit, I think. Yeah. That looks about right. So it's starting to appear from the ether, I feel is the right way to put it, right? We're not there yet in a lot of ways, but the kind of form of it is starting to appear. What is this? Why is this? How is this? All good questions for me, right? And this is a living sketch, so I'm going to keep doing this where I basically destroy bits and pieces that are working, not working, etc. And just, we're going to get it to a point where it's like, yeah, I can just see that in some respect or another, right? That's kind of the core goal. So that you should be able to see coming in a bit more. intersect a little bit more here. Right, that's actually important. We lose a bit of that negative space for it, which is a little bit of a shame. So whether that loses some of it. There we go. Intersects there. Yeah, so the horns are going to be the next difficult bit, or probably one of the most difficult bits, full stop. Right, so how do they work? They go out, they're almost in 3 sections, right? Out, out, in. I've drawn them as 2 because it gives the right idea, but they're kind of out, out, in. And I need to figure out how I want that to dynamically function. So the first thing is this one's going to go out. And then it's going to have to come back in. Well, that doesn't work. Just that work. Still not really. So it's too big again? Yeah, because I've expanded that dome a little bit. Right, that's part of the trick. Making the dome of the head a little bit bigger has been nice, but also is a bit of a problem. Right, so that's going to come out, then it's going to go back. And it needs like a flat bit in the middle. Flat bit in the middle. Even then it doesn't really work. Okay, so how do I want it to go? Do I want it to push forward? Because if I want it to push forward, it has to come forward, right? And then it can still go... Then it can still come back if it needs to. And actually that would kind of curve in that way, right? That's one potential. That they come in and round in a very... That's super messy and not very visible. Let me show that better. So the horn could come like that. Right? And I can make different parts of that more dynamic. So if I flatten it, you know, there's ways for that to work. Or do I want the horns to be really back across the head? Do I want them to go kind of almost straight from here? And then they can really come in like that? Is that a potential I want? Or do I want to do something totally different with it? Do I want it to really come this way, right? To curve like that back to here. Almost. So actually it needs to come to there, then it's another one that comes to like there. And then does it come in like that? Is that what these horns are? This is the part where, because they're drawn weirdly, I need to really work to make it function. Right? I need to put a lot of effort in right now to figure out how these work, because the way I drew them was not very straightforward. Which would imply for concept art that I did not draw them very well in the first place. I shouldn't be having to do this mental maths this hard. That implies that I started incorrectly, right? And if make that a bit more like that. So I don't mind that actually, but what I'm going to do is slightly change the dynamics again. To that. Yeah, so then to do this the other way is actually trickier. So this is cylinder out. Then straight back through, right? That's what that actually is. That curls round. And then kind of here-ish, it's going to have to feed... I mean, that's going to be there, so it's more like that. Right? So then that horn is going to exist more like that. And I haven't got the nice curve shape yet, but we'll sort that in a second. Because what this needs to do is sort of chase that way more, and then it's going to overlap come through. Right? It's going to have to do more like that. Then we don't need the top connection, it's just to give the overlap impression, which is easy to do with shading. Is that correct? No, because that needs to center. Where am I? There. And this needs to be a little longer, otherwise it doesn't work. Why is this wrong? It's wrong because it needs to come the other way. That's why. This gets overlapped, right? That's how this functions. So there should be something kind of there. That looks weird, doesn't it? Yes, it does, because with something in front of it, it looks... She needs to start in the same place as well, doesn't it? Pretty much. I think I know what else it needs, so let's just quickly put it in. It needs to be way further around the shoulder, doesn't it? Because like, look where this is, like there's all this space, and this gets clamped a little bit, but it needs a little bit more for space. Let's take that, tuck it in a little bit, make it a bit small. This is the hardest bit. This is why I left them till the end. I hate having to do this. The rest of this was kind of easy in comparison. This is such a difficult bit of sort of mental gymnastics to go through. So then, fortunately, the shape of bells is actually kind of even all around. Just need to make sure this rope looks natural. start to add these strands in. You can see why it's going to be weird. There we go. If we put this on this side, because I want this nice internal twist, right? Which then you don't get it. Yeah, you shouldn't get a tool on this side, because I shouldn't get the inside of this horn at all, right? That's the 3/4. That should come like that. That needs to come around a bit more. I think it's really tough, this bit. Gonna liven that up a tiny bit. There are some things I can just make look a little better instantly, right? So I might as well just give it a quick touch up. There we go, putting in the little goat eye because I can. Nice. This is going to be the same, right? So this is going to have like a little bit of a gap. Then we're going to have strands coming around, over. So pretty inexact science this. I can kind of do what I want with these strands, right? Because I'm going to redraw and render them all out anyway. So some of the things that are becoming a little apparent is that needs a little bit more curvature now. So this is where we're going to go back to the tool I mentioned earlier. We're going to go edit, transform, mesh transformation, and I'm just going to give it that little bit extra curve. Not that. That's the wrong button. That one. Right, and then having that little extra curve helps. That needs to come in a bit more, and then that one can recess back a little bit as well. So that's also important, is that needs to come across a little bit further. And this one can get chopped in a little bit. There we go. And this is going to be the same with the shoulders, right? But one of the big things now is I can start to emphasize these bits and pieces more. Here is our little corpse hanging from the tree, and I'm just going to use again the like negative cutouts to It needs to be the hand there, which needs to be the arm, and then the shoulder needs to be there. No, it doesn't. It's going to be hidden. Ah, I'm just not thinking. That's there. That's there. Chopped it up a little bit. And this is going to come round a little bit. You should be able to see their skin poking through. And then on the other side, we actually need some of these dynamics to show up a little bit. They will be mostly in shadow, but I'm just going to reference them for myself now. Right? You should see where they end. This is where having this all be shadowed is going to be very helpful. See, the temptation to actually make this kind of glowing. Oh, that could be really cool. Wait. There's some ways to make this really cool. But just going to keep working at the design, I guess. That's the trick. I want these to still be quite smooth compared to the rest. I like that element of it quite a lot. And actually, in a way, I might make this smoother too. We'll see. For now, it can just have... What is it currently yet? It's like triple bar type thing. It's something like that. It's actually pretty simplistic as a piece of patterning, so it's not too wearing to keep in for now. If it was an annoying pattern to draw as well as me not being sure about it, I probably would scrap it and do something a little different, but there's no reason when it's that easy to just put in, right? There we go. Tiny leg. That actually should be further along. It should be something like that. Yep, undo that. That way, and then that's a flat plane on top, and a side plane, and a little cylinder plane. And actually that can come in a bit more, because that's a pretty stark cut there. There we go. Just make it pointy like it's supposed to be. Gotta be pointy, right? There we go. Yeah, that's not correct. Oh well, I'll do it again in a minute. Actually, where are we at? Time-wise? I think... I'm afraid we're going to wrap up the stream here, because actually it's getting pretty late into the day. So yeah, thank you for coming along and hanging out. That's kind of where we're at. There's still, I need to move this bell. Actually, this is going to drive me insane if I don't. So it needs to be way closer to our side of things. Actually, what if I just... Oh no, that's way worse. Oh, it's not way worse. No, we're good, we're good. I also need to make it even, but... The bell itself just needs to be that. It needs to be more to this side. That's very important. Does it? Does it need more to the other side? Maybe the bell still needs to be in the middle, actually. Similarly, I need to remember that, like, that's a thing. That's a thing. It's just the areas of cloth quickly, right? And then the rope is going to pin here. And then it's going to come round and pin here. And that's important too. Actually, I'm going to do that in the same way I did before, which is I'm going to take a grey, not the background grey, it can be a bit darker, and it can come around and through. Banner that should be just under the horn there, so it's going to be that. This one is going to be here. That needs to face the other way. Bad. It needs to come in right here. A bit more like that. I forgot I made those way bigger than they look. I have been told I should make them shorter, and I don't necessarily disagree, but just for the initial process for my brain, I'm going to keep them long, and I might change it later. And then just get some too. Should have more. Like that. And these can also be here. And let's cut that up a little bit. There we go. Which I know is I don't think it's quite as fun and dynamic, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, there we go. I think that's fixed it, weirdly. I think it's that really thin joint at the waist is fun. Yeah. I think that works nicely to me. Just tuck in that tiny leg to finish for the day. Now I am gonna go because I need to eat. Alright. Thank you very much for hanging out. I hope you had fun. I hope you can see the design kind of forming into something. 3/4 view. Creature. Oh, wait, you can't do 3/4 view. 34 view creature. Cool. Alright, I'm going to find somebody to raid. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time. Bye bye.